What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to episode 7 of the U.S.S. Enterprise D tutorial. I'm Zero Elite, and I just want to thank you very much for tuning in today's episode. If you haven't, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, helping me and supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. Today we got about a 34-minute video, kind of a long one, re-adding just a couple more layers here to the outline of our saucer here. And then we're actually going to be moving down to the neck, and I'm going to try to build out the backbone of the neck in one episode. See how far we get with that. So without further ado, let's jump into it, because like I said, this is going to be a long one. Now on our current row that we're at here, we're at 2 rows of half slabs. We're going to make it a third. So again, you just want to be very careful when you're doing this, minding your cuts, because that's basically our guideline for when we're going to be adding another row in. And if you don't pay attention with that, you can make a mistake very easily to mess up the whole look of the ship. Or if you're not super careful, you can throw some blocks down underneath like I just did there. That looks pretty good, so you want to do that going all the way around the saucer. And when you're done with that, you're going to be at it right about here. And now we're going to do a row of white quartz directly behind that. A full blocks this way, there's a nice lip coming up behind it. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do this going all the way around the saucer, and of course, minding our cuts. Want to throw these bits in, but after we do this, I think we're actually going to be hopping over to the neck, which is going to be a lot of fun. Kind of being sarcastic, but it's going to be a lot of work to get it done all the way right. So once we're done with that, we're going to be coming off of the dead center back end. And you can see here that I'm going all the way down to the bottom row that we currently have. And I'm building off of that, and I'm coming straight out. Now, I'm certain someone's going to say, well, how far are you coming out? Well, I'm going to answer that for you in just a second here. I'm only really going to be coming out 1 block further than the outline here. This row right here, we're going to be bringing this all the way down to kind of make like a cut. You can see that there's another line above it. We don't need that line. I had done that as a test to kind of see how it was going to work out. Now going down, you definitely want to count this out with me, because this is kind of going to be like a guideline for what our reference is for how long we want our neck to be. But that line right there, we don't necessarily need that one. It's really this bottom line here, we kind of need that, and we need this line. But the neck is going to be a little bit of a process. Now we're going to come back here, and as soon as we can add a full block, we're going to bring that all the way back. We're going to get rid of the access right here, and then underneath, we're going to get rid of that. We're actually going to get rid of all of it. So it's only going to be a couple shy from all the way in the front. So it's kind of adjusting our bottom line right here. And the reason I have this guideline right here is that's exactly what it is. It's going to be a guideline to help us to build out our neck. And I'm just going to start out going 2 by 2, and I'm doing that on each side. And I started off at the top there to kind of get an idea of how I'm going to make it 3D, but really what I'm testing out right now is to see how the very front middle is going to look if I want to go 2 by 2. Now we're not going to be building out all the front of the neck in today's episode. We're really going to be focusing on the backbone, but we still need to have a loose idea of where that's going to go, and that might actually be too steep. this is why we do this. We got to throw this stuff down, see how it looks. Once we throw it down, zoom out, take a look at it. If it doesn't look right, we can always make changes. So you see I've kept the first 2 rows 2 by 2, and then now I'm going 1 by 1. I don't know if 1 by 1 is going to work. We might have to swap in between. We might have to go 2 and then 1 1 2 and keep doing that all the way down. I think I'm actually going to mess with that and see how that looks. Which doesn't look terrible. It looks kind of janky a little bit. And yeah, so for those of you that I've been telling you guys for a little while that this is going to be more of a true build from scratch, because when we've done the Cerratos and even the Disco Era Enterprise, I pretty much had all those patterns locked away in my head from other ships that I've done. The Enterprise D has just been completely different, and a lot of the patterns that I typically use for the most part is not going to help us at all with the neck. Kind of got like a loose idea of what I was going to do with it when we did the mock tutorial, but I think it's still a fantastic exercise to do, and I highly recommend it for anybody that's maybe a little bit worried about building Enterprise D, because it will familiarize yourself with it. But as far as doing those patterns, we're not really going to be using any of those patterns from that build. And even the Cerratos, I thought that I would be able to use some of the stuff that I did on the Cerratos on the Enterprise D, and it turned out that I practically didn't use any of it at all. Because the neck is just such a pain in the butt to get right, and that doesn't look horrible, that slope. Because it does kind of slope down like that from that angle a little bit. Yeah, no, I can definitely see why people don't post a lot of screenshots of their necks on this ship specifically, because it took me a really long time just to get it where it was from what you guys saw in the full teaser trailer. What you guys see in that video, that is the finished neck, and while it's not perfect, I'm actually very proud of how it came out, because I think it's about as close as you're going to get and as clean as you're going to get for the Enterprise D. I haven't necessarily seen people do that much of a better job with it, and the ones that from a distance it might look better, but then when you zoom in and you look at it, it looks more like rows of shaved wood. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely something to take into consideration. But that doesn't look bad right there in the front. That may be enough at least to start the backbone, because really we can make changes to the front, but we need a reference to go off of to make our backbone. And that's my main reason for wanting to do this, because it's going to give us a level of proportions. Now on the back side here, I think we can maybe get away with doing 2 by 2. But I will give you a hint and let you know how we're going to transition this as we're going down. We're going to kind of cheat, and we're going to use the outline, well, not the outline, well, yeah, part of the outline for the back side of the saucer here, and we're just going to transition it, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. I'm actually really happy with how that came out. While it's not, again, I'd say it's not perfect, I think the back of my neck is a little more in shape of a V, where the Enterprise D kind of slopes in a little bit more, but it was so unbelievably hard just to get it to that point, to make it to even slope in the way that it did. That was one of the reasons why it took so long on the tutorial, because hands down, without a doubt, there's not even a question on it. The neck and the saucer, or not the saucer, the neck and the deflector dish were the 2 hardest parts on this build to get it right. And it just seemed like for a little bit, no matter what I did, I wasn't fully happy with it. And I just had to keep messing with it until I came up with something that I was happy with. And you guys are going to find yourself in this situation too, where you're just building something, it doesn't come out right. And the best recommendation I can make with that I can suggest is just what I've done. Throw something down, see how it looks, and if it doesn't look right, go back to your source material. In this case, I'm using a 3D model of the Enterprise D, and look at that, go back to what you have, and just start thinking about, okay, what can I do to fix this and make it look like it? It may take a couple of things, it may take like a trial period here and there, but you will get there if you keep trying at it. But, I mean, I'm not the type of person that I can get these builds done perfectly on the first shot. It just doesn't work out that way, and it's not realistic. And I think most people that build on Minecraft that are being truthful with you would probably admit that as well, that at the end of the day, sometimes you just got to keep making changes until you comes out the way you want it to. Now, the side view right there, that doesn't look bad. That's pretty close to what we're going for with the neck on the Enterprise D, because the back side of the neck does kind of slope back a bit. Now, it's not as broad as, like, let's say the 2009 Enterprise. That one really comes back quite a bit, but it has some length on it, and it slopes back kind of pretty close to this. I think we're looking pretty decent. So this bottom side right here, I'm going to bring this all the way back, and you don't necessarily have to worry about counting with me. We're literally just going to connect the two sides. I'll show you exactly how to do that. You can totally get away with without counting this stuff out. We're really just going to make both sides match up. So now what we're going to do is we're going to continue this pattern on with the two, going 2 by 2 until the two sides meet. And it's as simple as that. You can get away with doing stuff like that without having to count out all the way. Save yourself a little bit of trouble just by paying attention to what you're doing, making sure the sides match up. This way you don't have to worry about counting it out. That's what we're able to do right there. Just to have a reference to the bottom of where we want to stop at. That looks pretty good. And at this point, I'm going back and forth. I'm looking at what I have right here, and I'm looking at my reference material from the same angle from the side. And it's just these two lines right here, and I'm looking at the same thing on the 3D model Enterprise D, and I'm thinking, okay, does this match what I'm trying to build? And if it does, which I think it does right here, we're just going to go with it. I compared shipbuilding on here. It's very close to wireframing. It's essentially the same exact thing, and that's really what we're doing right here, is that we're wireframing our ship out. And then after we wireframe it, then we're going to make it three-dimensional. I don't necessarily know why I added these two blue lines here, even though I could have just built over it. But I think my main thought behind it is that I want to move maybe this line a little bit forward, or excuse me, the front of the neck forward, make it just a little bit wider than what it currently is. So I'm just going to repeat my same pattern. Really, it's 2 by 2 going almost all the way down after that one single, so it's kind of hard to mess it up. You just got to pay attention to what you're doing. But as we're going through today's episode, if you get stuck, if you're having problems, drop a comment below. I'm usually pretty responsive in the comment section. I'll try to help you out. But I think I'm getting to a point where I'm building these in a way that really haven't had to have too many people ask questions, which I think is awesome. So that means I'm getting better as not only a builder on here, but doing tutorials where I'm building in a way that's easy for other people to follow on. So now what we're going to do is we're going to zoom out and take a look and see if the extended front that we just made is what we want. Or maybe it could be too forward or too far forward. These are things we got to take into consideration. And it's better to figure this stuff out now rather than later on, because having this type of care now is going to save you from pretty much repeating your work over and over again later on. Even though we're not necessarily going to be starting over again, but we are going to be making quite a few adjustments to the neck as we go, and the deflector dish. Other than that, really the outside of the ship is mostly going to be a breeze. I do know that when I was working on the engines, I think that I decided to extend them 2 times after I built them originally. And that was just entirely based off of looking at the ship at a distance and getting the proportion, and it just turned out that the length that I had, it just, at the end of the day, the engines, they just weren't long enough to what they needed to be. So I kind of like what I got going on here. I think this extra length is kind of where it needs to be at. It looks pretty good. It doesn't look bad, so I'm just going to run with that. I'm going to use that extra length, and we're going to need it because we don't, at the end of the day, we don't want the ship to be too small. Enterprise D is supposed to be a pretty big ship, and we also need the room on the inside to do a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, doing at least for the interior, and we need to also make sure that we have enough room not only to build those rooms out, but our corridors and our turbo lifts and everything. So I think that's actually a pretty decent size what we got going on right now. Now at this point, I'm just kind of figuring out what my next move is going to be. And I'm kind of thinking, I know what I'm going to do, but at this point in the build, I was kind of thinking about maybe it might be best to start out with the backbone of the ship. Figure that out. It's easier to proportion out the rest of your ship. So I'm going to use a gray block just to separate things. It's never a bad idea to have a separator block or builder block, whatever you want to go by for that. Just going to use this as a transitional point. We're not necessarily going to keep this line. We will make changes to it. I think we're going to do one more row. Really, this line that we're adding right now is just to determine the overall length that we're going to make the neck be. So you can start to envision where I'm going at with it. So now I've got an outline here. I can zoom out, take a look at it, and also look at my reference material and try to determine if that's the best length to go with. Maybe it could be too big, maybe it could be too small. These are things we got to take into consideration. But it's always good to throw this down and take a look at it, because I always say that take your time when you're doing these builds. It's not a relay race. It's well, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, is what I'm getting at. Take your time with it, because the quicker you go and the more rash you are at making decisions, the more likely you are to make mistakes, and then what do you have to do with those mistakes? You have to correct them. So that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of being cautious right now, to try to figure out if I'm happy with this length that I have going right now. I think that could work, because the neck at the top point here, it is kind of wide and then it bows in. So that could work out pretty well. Now obviously we're not even done with the saucer section. We will be going back to that more, but we're at a point now where it's time to start thinking about other sections of the ship. Which is why we're working on the neck, because we also need to get the lower hull built, and then of course the pylons that hold the engines, and then the nacelles, aka the engines themselves. So that's looking pretty good. So I think we're going to add another row, except this time switching to the white quartz. I was originally going to go 3, but then I decided, I'm like, you know, I built this 2x2, so that's the best thing to do. So I'm literally just going to go with the cuts. And this is what I mean that we're going to transition down based off the outline on the saucer. do one more row now. So far, so good. Because again, we're going with the 2x2. I actually need to go out a little bit more on this side to make it match the right side. Now you can see that I am skipping one row on the left and right. I am doing that on purpose because I'm trying to figure out how to make it start cutting in on the sides and make it a transition that looks good. And I'm not set on that, but you can kind of get the idea of now where I'm going with it, how we're going to transition this level to level as we go down. And we've got our middle backbone set in, so really at this point it's just a matter of repeating this process that we've started over and over again until we get to the bottom. Now, I'm not going to be skipping over any of this. I'm going to be doing all of this live. And there's a reason for that, because when we were doing the saucer, some of the things that we were, well, pretty much everything that what we were doing there was very, very repetitive, and it was pretty difficult to make a mistake. With this, even though we're going to be pretty much doing repetition over and over again, I think it's going to be very important not to skip over this, because this is a very complicated area of the build, and I foresaw people having issues with it. I had issues myself trying to figure out the right way to even go about it, and it's different when we were doing the saucer. It's kind of hard to mess up when you're adding an extra row to a circle, but I've never built out this type of neck before, so that was another reason too that I just wanted to make a point to build all of this out live. And that's one of the reasons why this episode is over 34 minutes today, because we're just spending the time to build this out live. And I don't want anyone to worry. Any sections on the ship that require that extra care, I'm just going to build them out live. Any areas that were too repetitious, that it's to the point that I feel that it will be impossible to make a mistake without showing all of it, then we'll kind of do what we did with the saucer section. But in areas where we need it, we're definitely going to do it. Now that's looking pretty good, and you can definitely start to envision where this is going to go. But it's going to require a little bit more work even after we get all the way down to the bottom. We're going to have to do more to it to make it look right. And it's going to require some half slabs at the end of the day just to make it get where it needs to be. Now you can kind of see that every single layer that I go down, at the very end I'm cutting off two, or I'm cutting off a row on every single level. So I'm trying to continue that transition point. I don't know if that's necessarily going to work. I don't know if it's going to get too close to the point where when we get at the bottom, if we're still going to have room on the left and right side. I'm not really sure. I'm going to have to kind of play this by ear and mess with it a little bit until we get to where we want it to be. But so far, it doesn't look bad. Alright, now we're just going to continue on and do the same thing on the right side. One of the things I love about this design that I came up with is that it meshes well with the dish, or the saucer section. It looks great, and of course, because I mean it's the same exact pattern. And these are ways that you can cheat when you're doing your builds. Hopefully, as I've done this, you guys have learned a little bit on things to do in these situations. There'll be more of that too. There's going to be some more scenarios when we go back into the saucer section where I'll show you how to reuse basically things that we have already, rather than going through the headache of trying to use a section of a smaller circle generator and knowing exactly where to place it and all that crap. I think this will work out pretty well. Alright, so now we're going to transition down again. Not gonna lie, we might end up having to add some girth on the sides there, some, well, length on the left and right side, because I'm not confident at this point that we're going to be able to go all the way down to our base here, what we have so far. We could be. It's been a little while since I did this. I think at this point, I think we're going back to like beginning of February when I was at this point, so it's definitely been a couple of months, and that gives you an idea of how long I've actually been working on this thing. And not every single day, we're talking off and on for a period of a few months, but that's kind of what it takes when you want to build a ship this size. And that's why I've said a lot recently that I don't know if I'm going to make another ship this big again, because it takes a really long time to render it in. It's a little bit easier when you're dealing with something on the scale of my other ships that I've done so far. Because that's something else too, because I've had some people ask me about the Enterprise E. It's not going to be the next ship that I do, because I don't want to get to a point that the channel's just only about building Enterprises, and then, I mean, that'll be kind of a short trip if I did that even. I know ultimately I am going to build every version of the Enterprise, but I'm not in a rush to do it. And I would like, there's other ships that I want to build. My point is that when I do build the Enterprise E, and this is something I'm going to be thinking about ongoing, is that how big I want to make it, because I know it's supposed to be a little bit longer than the Enterprise D. So that's something I'm really going to be taking into consideration. I might end up doing it the same size as the Enterprise D. I might end up making it smaller. I'm really not sure yet. I'm going to kind of play that one by ear. It really wouldn't surprise me if I did it on a smaller scale, more along the lines of the ships I've done in the past, just to try to save on time, but I don't know. I'm not going to commit to that at this point, because that's a little bit too far out in the future on stuff that I'm going to be doing, and I think that we're going to be working on the Enterprise D for a good while, because I'm well over 200 episodes on my recording sessions, and I'm only just now getting to the interior. Now, does that mean that this tutorial series is going to be 200 episodes? No, that just means I've got 200 clips that I've recorded so far. And some of them are long, like this one ended up being. Some of them are only a couple of minutes long. Some of them are only a minute long. Depends on what I'm doing. But still, there's a lot of work to do on this ship. And I think that we'll be working on the Enterprise D for a good while because of that. And I'm fine to do it. I really want to flesh this ship out and do as much as I possibly can with it. Because I've been looking forward to building the Enterprise D. I mean, I think for me, I grew up with the Shatner movies, but and that will always probably be like my favorite version of Star Trek. But I would probably say that Next Generation is like a close second and possibly a tie. That could very well be, because I pretty much watched both of those hand in hand at just about the same time. But the Shatner movies I saw first. But yeah, well, we'll kind of see what happens with that. But, you know, like I said, there's going to be other ships that we're going to be doing. And as always, don't forget, if there's stuff that you want to see me build, be sure to drop a comment below. If I'm getting enough people asking for it, I'll definitely do a tutorial on it if I can. And that's something we can definitely think about and start talking about what I'm going to do after the Enterprise D. Even though we'll be working on this for a good while, still think about that stuff. Now, I do know that I'm not going to attempt to do 2 builds at once again. I did that for the Separator, and I was able to do it, but I don't want to necessarily be in that situation again, because I don't feel like I could have done maybe a little bit more with the Separator, but at the same time, I wasn't necessarily having a lot of people ask me for doing a little bit more with the interior. So that's definitely something too. But, you know, again, you know, if there's something you want to see me build, drop a comment below. And if I get enough people asking for it, you know, I'll definitely, if I can, I will build it, if it's possible. Anyway, getting back in a little bit what we got going on here, we're looking pretty good. But now I'm getting to a point where on the edges here, my cuts, or my transition lines on the sides here, they're kind of looking a little bit funky because we're getting at a point that a cut is going to be going hand in hand with another one. Kind of see what I mean, like right here. So that's going to have to be something that we're going to figure out. I think the only thing that ultimately I end up on making the sides of the neck here a little bit wider than they currently are to fix it. Because one thing I definitely know that we're going to do, I'm pretty sure going along the lip here of each row that we transition down, we're going to soften the cut with half slabs. But definitely going to have to figure out the issue with the sides here. I think I end up going just one more in, trying to see if that's enough to fix the length, or excuse me, to fix the cut as we're going in. But then I also need to be careful with that too, because you don't want to make it too wide. Because we got other stuff we got to do on the sides. We got to add the impulse engines, and the impulse engines are not that far out. They're really not. They're kind of close into the neck, and they're really not all the way out on the sides. They're kind of tucked right in there, pretty close to where the neck is, from what I remember off the top of my head. So definitely going to have to be careful with that, with as far as watching the length on the sides here. But I think that's ultimately what I'm going to end up having to do here, is make it just a little bit longer than it currently is. Now, an easy solution would be to start, because you can see it's this row of the cut right here that's messing it up. The easiest thing to do would be to start from here and then going out. But then we're also going to have that problem again when we get to this cut. I'm trying to envision if that's going to be enough to transition down. It may not be. I think we're actually going to run out of time before we're able to finish the backbone, but this is going to take a little bit of time to get this perfect. And like I said, I'm really not trying to rush this, and I would suggest you do the same thing, because it will be worth it. If you want something like what I have in the teaser trailer, take your time with me and take the time to do this thing right on the tutorial. I'm going to do my best to talk about everything that I do in the decision making that I make here, but we've got a problem to solve right now. And that problem is, how do we fix this right here? Make a transition in. Pretty certain at this point the only solution that we can make is adding more on the sides. What we can do is we can try to continue on here, because part of this is going to stay, at least the dead center of it. It just might end up being a little bit wider. So I'm trying to add another row on here to kind of see where it's going to go, and right here it messes up, and that's what I don't like, this area specifically. Because it's not matching the transition as we're going row to row. I mean, it kind of is, but what's messing it up is right here. You see it's going 2 to 2 to 2. This is technically 2, but it's not, because where it's cutting in, there's a pretty much like a step there. So that's what's messing up the look of it. Whereas technically it's right, but because there's a transition right there, it doesn't look right. Alright, yeah, this is where I'm going to bring in the half slabs, because I'm hoping that the half slabs can maybe help me in fixing that, which I don't think that they're going to. Yeah, because I don't want that extra lip right there on the side. But the backside itself with those half slabs, that looks pretty good. And it really matches now with the top side lip of the saucer. But we've unfortunately run out of time today. Doesn't seem like we've gotten that far, but we have. We've done a little bit of work, and we're still trying to figure out what we're going to do exactly for the problem that we're facing right here, but we're going to figure it out. So anyway, stick with me through the rest of this tutorial series, and we're going to have a lot of fun while we're building this thing. But yeah, that's going to wrap us up today. I just want to thank everybody again for tuning in today's episode. And if you did enjoy this content, hey, help me out. Hit that like and subscribe button, helping me in supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. YouTube definitely uses those analytics based off likes. So the more likes I have in my videos, more people can see these videos. So I definitely appreciate everybody that not only takes the time to watch these videos, but smashes that like button. Also, new subscribers, don't forget to hit notification on so you always get notified when those new videos drop. And speaking of new videos, you can usually catch my Starship Evo builds dropping on Mondays and my Minecraft videos dropping Tuesdays through Thursdays. Those videos usually drop around 7 p.m. Eastern. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for me. I just want to thank you all again for tuning in today's episode. I hope everybody has a happy and safe week, and I'll catch you on the next episode.